And welcome to Thrift Shop Biography. This is the one about Motley Crue. Thank you for listening. Hello.
Hello.
This week, I've been reading quite a different book. It's autobiographies of Motley Crue.
Yeah, collective.
Yeah, you've been reading it too, right?
I have actually.
You know what? You mentioned this book to me a few months ago, and I walked into the thrift shop. Yeah. I go into the thrift shop all the time.
It's because my mate said it is the ultimate rock biography and we have to read it.
And there it was, and I couldn't believe it. Yeah. It was £3 English. It's a lovely big book. It's beautiful.
That's quite expensive for a charity shop.
It is. Well, North London, know what I mean?
But it is a particularly nice book.
And £3 for this tale of rock and roll debauchery.
Well,
is really
four autobiographies are contained within it.
Yeah, so I'm not going to lie, I found it a bit confusing at times.
Yeah, it skips about between the four members of this band.
Yeah, and they're interjected with like their managers and stuff. So it's a fully rounded story, but having all of those voices and keeping up with who's saying what. And sometimes they will talk about the same event.
Yeah, they will.
From different perspectives.
Yeah. Plus it just dips in and out of... So it tries to go chronologically, but then sometimes it leaps back.
Yes. What did you know of Motley Crue before you read this book?
Not a lot, actually. I know Tommy Lee. He's, to me, the most famous because he married Pamela Anderson, and that was really highly publicised. Mm-hmm. And the other three, I didn't know what they looked like before reading this book.
Yeah. Motley Crue, right, I think as Brits, they had a modicum of success over here, but I think they were kind of overshadowed by bands like Def Leppard and Bon Jovi.
Oh, but it's not my genre.
No, this is what I was just about to say to the average pop fan who weren't into metal. They had a couple of low-key hits in the 1980s. But if you were a metalhead, oh my God, you totally know
huge.
them. Yeah, they're huge.
And they toured and they sold out and they toured Britain and everything,
Yeah, no, they certainly had an audience over here. I just don't think it translated to the singles charts, which is what most of us kids in the 80s were.
That's right, yeah. Girls, Girls, Girls is the one I really know. Mm-hmm. Do you think we sound like dads? I don't really know this band.
I think it's a fantastic name for them, Motley Crue.
Yeah, it's excellent.
It's perfect, isn't it? I don't know if there's a better band name.
I mean, Guns N' Roses around the similar time had way more hits. I mean, I'm way more familiar with their music. Actually had one of their albums. I had a Def Leppard album. You know, the ones that really broke into the charts more I actually listened to. Mm-hmm. And I had heavy metal mates at school.
I think the difference between the success of Motley Crue and, say, Bon Jovi is just that Bon Jovi's record company decided to spend more money on them and promoting them.
Bon Jovi's pop rock. That's not proper metal at all. Like, Guns N' Roses are proper metal.
Yeah.
I mean, you know, actually a bit threatening and dangerous. Bon Jovi were not.
They were like... Bon Jovi are kind of like... I mean, I like Bon Jovi, but compared to, like, Motley Crue, Bon Jovi are like rock. The daytime TV, family-friendly version of metal.
Yeah. I don't know about their lives, but I don't think they went around smashing up hotels.
But if they did, they probably did it once because they felt like they were supposed to.
Maybe.
Rather than they were just four crazy flipping characters who should be in prison like Motley Crue.
Yes. Yes.
I mean, they're insane.
Yeah. And some of it's laughable and some of it isn't.
No. That's the thing about this book, is that it actually is written with humour.
Yeah.
And so you find yourself laughing at it. And then when you think about...
Hang on a minute.
Yeah. Even though humanity does eventually come out in this book, you kind of think...
It took a while, didn't it? Yeah.
But also, after everything they've done, especially to other people, you kind of think, oh, I don't even care if there's real people inside them. They're so awful.
Yeah,
But I did come round to them in the end, I'm going to be honest. Anyway, we should not start. We always do this. We start at the end.
The thing is, the ultimate thing I find is it's not an act. They're real. They're really living it. And they didn't just invent it and then join a band and then become it. They were always those people. They were born those people.
Yeah.
They were troubled kids. Crazy, drug-taking kids.
Well, do you know, shall we start?
Yeah.
So there's 4 people in the band. 3 of them are kind of like teenagers at the beginning, but one of them, Mick. So hang on, it's Mick, Tommy, Vince and Nicky.
Yes. Mick constantly thinks, Mickey Mars, he constantly thinks that he's older. He's like, oh, I'm the old one. When you look at it, he's what, 3 or 4 years older.
Yeah, but when you're 18, that is quite a big gap.
Plus he'd already got a wife and kids when he met them.
Yeah. And he'd been gigging in other bands and stuff.
So he'd, I guess 3 or 4 years of gigging in life, that's quite a long time.
And I do think, like, through reading the book, he is the kind of most grown-up one. So maybe it's not necessarily just an age thing. He seems less crazy than the others.
Yeah, and part of that is that he's got a debilitating disease.
That made me so sad, actually.
Yeah, do you know what? Because I don't think they communicate that well about real life, anything other than drugs and girls and whatever. I'm not sure that they actually knew the extent of his pain. I wonder whether the rest of the band will find out through reading this book
that's an interesting
what he actually went through, because I don't think he told them, because they always think he's boring and he doesn't move much.
Yeah, well, he can't move
He's got debilitating pain. Yeah. I'm almost certain he never shared that with them.
Oh, that's an interesting thought, actually.
I think they'll all have learned quite a lot about each other through this book, actually.
And that's actually an interesting thought, because it all appears to be written separately. It didn't occur to me that some of them might be finding out things about each other by reading this book.
There's a bit where one of them says, I actually had sex with the other one's girlfriend, and I never told him. I never was. And then there's a little bit later, the one says, I've just found out through this book that he was seeing my girlfriend so much. So I think they must be reading each other's bits as they went along.
As they were writing it. That's funny. So, not a spoiler alert as such. I'm amazed that they're all still alive.
Me too.
Yeah.
Well, how do we do this then? Shall we do one at a time?
So listeners, apologies if we stray a bit, because this is essentially 4 autobiographies in one. And they do a lot of tours and a lot of albums and stuff, and I'm not going to remember the chronological order. They all seem to mould into one eventually. And there's also a lot of bad behaviour, which I guess doesn't matter if we talk about it chronologically or not. It's sort of appalling.
Yeah.
Oh, do you know what? Let's give the listeners the very first paragraph of the book.
Yeah.
I mean, it really does set up how the rest of the book is going to go. You definitely, if you make it to the end of the first paragraph, you know whether you want to read this book or not. Yeah. So here we go. Motley Crue, Chapter 1, Vince. So Vince is the singer. Vince
Neil, yeah.
Her name was Bullwinkle. We called her that because she had a face like a moose. But Tommy, even though he could get any girl he wanted on the Sunset Strip, would not break up with her. He loved her and wanted to marry her. He kept telling us because she could spray her cum across the room. And now we have the story of Motley Crue, and it does not get any better than that.
Sets the tone.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, let's just say this at the beginning. Their misogyny is off the scale.
There's also, I must add, a lot of women that throw themselves at these blokes. They take their clothes off, throw themselves at them. Tons of them.
Yeah.
It incites that behaviour. They bring that behaviour out in women, so it's not just one way.
There would be groupies, right?
Yeah. Right, we need to read a book of a groupie. And I know there's one out there.
Oh, there's more than one.
Yeah, there is. There's a really
Pamela
famous
Dave
one.
Bars.
Yes, we need to read
Cynthia
that.
Plasticaster.
I wonder if we've managed to get to the root of the other side of it, because there is another side of it. These blokes aren't just taking innocent girls off the streets.
Oh no,
the crazy girls are finding them.
No, they're not, and these women are, for want of a better expression, throwing themselves at the rock stars. But I also think within that environment, there should still be a basic level of respect. And these men in this band totally humiliate and demean these women to the point where it's not enough to have sex with them. They'll do something so humiliating. There's a section in this book where 2 girls come backstage and say, we want to fuck all of you after the concert. And they say to one of them, okay, if you want to do that, you see that bottle in the middle of the room? Sit on it for the entirety of the concert. And when we come back, if you're still there, you can fuck us.
Naked, obviously.
Yeah.
Yeah,
and she did it, and they come back, and it's just like, you can't ask a woman to sit on a bottle for 2 hours.
That's not just a woman. That's a girl who said, "I want to fuck all of you." That's part of the game. It's a whole other world. It's a world of sex parties. Yes, I do.
I know. I think that's consent. If a woman wants to go in and fuck a rock band and she's consenting to that, and they are, that's absolutely fine.
I think that's what's turning them on.
To give her a qualifying...
I think they want that. I don't know.
What you mean the woman wants that? She wants to be humiliated before she gets to fuck the band.
I mean, one of them turned up in a cage dressed as a cat. I honestly think that it's a two-way street. Maybe not all of them, but a lot of them. That's part of the game.
Oh wow, that's an interesting
do. That's thought. A whole sub-genre world where all this goes on, and it's part of the whole world of it. There's a story in this where Tommy Lee, I think it is, they all do become one when you don't really know them very well. There's a woman out on the balcony, and he lets her in, and she takes all her clothes off.
Yeah.
Has sex with him, says thank you very much or something, puts her clothes back on and leaves out of the balcony again. He's on the 10th floor or something. And then the next day he meets it's, oh my God, I can't remember who it is though. It's someone like...
Is it another performer?
Axl Rose or something. Or someone like that. And that's his girlfriend.
Yeah.
And he's like, oh my God. That's somebody literally using them for sex.
I get that. And that is a very assertive woman. If she fancies a rock star and she's going to shimmy up a drain pipe and get in the balcony on her own terms, shag that man, go home to her boyfriend. I think there's a world of difference. She sounds very much in control of that situation.
Yes.
Than saying to a woman, sit on that bottle for 2 hours if you want us all. Do you know what I mean?
That woman could say no and go home though. I think that's what they want. They're bad boys. If you go into that environment and say that, that's what you want.
Is it?
I think so. I'm not going to condemn all of their behaviour because I think that the women are completely consenting with it. It's part of their adventure too.
Okay,
but
all right.
Like I say, if you get to the bottom of why everyone behaves like this, you'll find some darkness behind it all. But that's all of it, men and women. Okay,
I would kind of argue that there's a power imbalance there between the groupie and the rock star, because the rock star has the power.
Yeah, but isn't that what they want, the groupie?
It's complicated.
There's a whole... You could... Somebody out there's an expert on this and could deliver a lecture and we should watch it.
Yeah, maybe we'll be able to do that.
The psychology of all of this.
Anyway.
But meanwhile, it's the dream. They're living the dream. Nicky Six starts the book off, so let's start with him.
Oh, his childhood.
It's rough.
Oh my God, it broke my heart. I almost wept for that little boy. Bless him.
They're mostly Californians, but they move about a bit. When he was 14, he had his mother arrested. Instead, he sliced his own arm and then said his mum did it. That's how desperate he was to disconnect from his family.
I know. He also wrecked the house and put a stone through every single window in the house.
Yeah, phoned
went
the police
next
and
door,
said his mum.
Cut his arm up and then got his mum arrested.
I mean, to the bone, yeah. And she was very beautiful and a party girl. Yeah. And
hey, she sang backup for Frank Sinatra. Yeah.
And went out with his bassist.
I was
and then
not
married
expecting that.
Yeah, no, partly because they go way back, because they're born round the end of the 50s, early 60s. Mm-hmm. That's quite a long time ago now.
Yeah, it's true.
And so you're going into another era, aren't you?
Yeah.
And Frank was still out there.
Yes.
Yeah, she went out with Richard Pryor as well.
Yeah.
So she was really a celebrity party girl. She's probably the sort of girl that he ended up with. Well, knocking around with, actually.
Yeah. When he called the police to get his mum arrested... The police came and said to him, OK, we'll arrest your mum, but you'll have to be taken into care. And you'll be in care until you're 18.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden he was like, oh, damn, I'm not going to be able to hang out with my friends and play guitar if I'm in care. And so he dropped the charges against his mum. And then he said, look, Mum, I'll drop the charges against you if you just let me be. I don't want anything else to do with you.
Ties.
And of course, at that point, she's probably thinking, yeah, sure, just go.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
And so he was a free agent from the age of 14. Yeah. A crazy little 14-year-old. But his early childhood was...
I mean, his mum's a party girl. They moved to Mexico for a while with this Frank Sinatra's bassist, Vinny, who she married, and then he beat him.
Oh, was that the bassist that beat him and had that German Shepherd dog who would bite him all the time?
Him. So, yeah, he just had a crap time.
Oh, honestly, he must have been terrified.
Yeah, age 7 he smoked weed with his mum and that bloke. 7.
And of course, because they were moving around a lot, he was going to new schools a lot, and he was getting bullied. He was
getting really bullied. So it was crap at school, crap at home.
Yeah.
And he said he became a juvenile delinquent, and the only thing that gave him a sense of power, he discovered, was violence.
Right.
So he became a violent little shit.
Yeah.
And got into drugs. And that song Big Bad John is what changed his life.
It switched him, didn't it? I love that song.
Yeah, it's really amazing that song just spoke to him.
Yeah.
Oh, there's some speaking in it.
Yeah, there is.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, he grew up with his grandparents a lot, and they sounded really good, really good influence. And then very sadly, years later, when he was drug-addled, his granddad phoned up crying, your grandma's dying, she really liked to see you. And he's just too drug-addled to go.
Oh, that's really sad.
And all the weeks pass, and then his granddad phones and says, she's died, please come for the funeral, too drug-addled to go. He was going to go that morning, then does another hit of whatever, and doesn't make it. And he says that's his biggest regret in his whole life, because his grandparents were really good to him and kind to him when he was young.
But they also moved around a bit, didn't they, the grandparents? Like, he just had no stability
that's true.
In his whole childhood.
Yeah, they did. They started in a farm here.
But they did, and they sounded like genuine, caring people.
Yeah.
It's a shame that he didn't live with them full time.
Yeah, then he stole a guitar because somebody wanted him to be a bass player, but he didn't even realise he'd stolen an acoustic guitar.
That was quite audacious, I thought. He went into the guitar shop with an empty guitar case, asked the guy behind the counter for an application form for a job.
Yeah.
When he went to get one, he quickly put a guitar in the case.
Guitar case and walked out with it. Yeah, that's a good way of stealing a guitar.
Yeah.
But he got the wrong one. So he had to sell that and buy a bass. Then they got into punk and the New York Dolls come into it.
New York Dolls, again, hugely influential by reading these biographies.
So it's partly the music, partly the attitude, and partly the look.
Right, can we just talk about the look for a minute? Because this still blows my mind.
Yeah.
So Motley Crue, I would say, are very New York Dolls in the way that they almost look like the same group.
They have completely copied them.
Yeah.
Which is... By the way, glam, they look like women. They dress like rock women.
They're full heterosexual men. Yeah. They are like...
Massive hair, tons of makeup, lipstick, everything.
And they, in the pictures in this book, they look like women.
They look like transsexuals.
They absolutely do. Yeah. And they wear high heel shoes.
And they can pull women like nobody's business. Yeah. All men can when they dress as women.
Oh, really?
It's a thing. They always say it. Like,
well, actually, this book is evidence of that, I guess, because they get so many women. It blows my mind that these macho rockers actually dress not just with the flourish of a woman, but actually just to look exactly like, a rock and roll
And women want to fuck them. Men want to be them. It's just really weird, isn't it? Not all men, obviously. They get beaten up by... Well, they would if they weren't violent terrors.
Yeah.
But they got as many man fans as women fans. Everyone loves them. The macho vibe comes through that, though. It is a very strange thing. Of course, I absolutely love a man in eyeliner. I think it's absolutely... They look beautiful, but why wouldn't they? Women wear eyeliners to look more beautiful. It just makes your eyes look gorgeous. And then look at Bowie, beautiful to men and women.
Yeah, I kind of think, he is. I find that kind of a bit different because it's more androgynous, isn't it?
It is androgynous, whereas they really look like
They just look like women.
Yeah. But it really works for them.
So he went to live with his grandparents, and then through some kind of weird twist of fate, his aunt visited. He said his very buttoned up, pretty aunt, who happened to be married to the head honcho of Capitol Records.
Yeah, that's a bonus.
Yeah. So then not long after, I think when he became 16, 17, he actually moved to live with them.
Yeah.
And he said they were the straightest family. He said it was like this tearaway going to live with the Brady Bunch.
Yeah, they eventually got sick of him. But for a while, they gave him a boost, they got him a job.
Yeah.
Record shop. But then he was stealing from the till, taking drugs, selling drugs there.
Yeah.
Stealing from houses at that time. Everything. He was a real tearaway. And they really tried, but they couldn't set him straight.
No, he was such a wild child, wasn't he?
But in that very record shop, in walked...
Mick.
Yeah, and then Mick asked him if he wanted to go and see him play, which he did. But then when they met later, it was nothing to do with that. It was complete coincidence.
That's right. They'd forgotten.
Yeah, it was 2 years later.
Yeah, that they'd actually met before. Yeah. So young Nicky Six is now in Hollywood.
Yeah, California.
Working jobs in bars and record shops, and he's put a little notice by the cash register saying bassist wants band, so he meets Mick. But, they don't realise till 2 years later, but he's in the
scene.
Area. He's part of the scene now. Yeah. Lots of musicians coming and going, watching gigs, and eventually where Motley Crue begins to come together.
You're in the mid-70s, aren't you? We're in the mid to late 70s.
Mid to late 70s.
Nicky said about that time, I was an arrogant, ungrateful little shit.
He was not wrong.
Yeah.
Oh, do you know what? Around this time, he gets back in touch with his dad.
Yeah.
Frank. Because actually, Nicky changed his name because he is actually called Frank after his dad.
Yeah, he's got exactly the same name as his dad. He changed it after this call, actually.
Yeah, and so he called up his dad.
Who'd left when he was, I don't know, he didn't know his dad at all.
No. And his dad just said, who is this? And he said, it's your son, Frank. Yeah. I'm Frank. And his dad said, I don't have a son.
Yeah. That devastated. That's the very seed that creates the bad character. That's it. That's all the anger, frustration, and feeling of worthlessness.
Yeah. Like if this was a superhero movie, this is the villain origin story.
That's it. Yeah. That's the words, I don't have a son.
Oh my God, do you know what? I know that he's a terrible little bastard.
Yeah.
But I'm like, it's because of everything that happened to him, actually, from the age of 3 or 4. And the picture in the book of him as a little boy, it's so sweet. It just, your heart breaks, you know? Yeah. I mean, there does come a point after this catalogue of terrible abuse and treatment of other people, you kind of think, okay, you fucking get help.
Yeah.
But I tell you what it did, it turned this awful... terrible rock star into a person.
Yes.
Knowing all of this which happened to him as a little boy. Yeah. I hope it's true. I hope he's not pulling our...
But it's such standard behaviour of people to be crap parents and ruin people's lives. It's so standard.
So many people should just not have children.
Yeah, everyone.
Yeah.
We should all fizzle out.
Yeah, we should stop
Give
having
the planet back to the
trees.
trees.
Oh my God, I love Mick's theory on planet Earth. He says people on Earth are just so awful.
Yeah.
He said, like Australia, the nation of Australia was kind of like built from the fact that countries like England shipped all of their criminals over there for a $10 ticket. Yeah. Anybody in England who was kind of just not really being that great, they offered them a chance to go and start a new life in Australia. So then Australia kind of became a bit like an open prison.
Yeah,
it just got a massive influx of criminals. Mick from Motley Crue says planet Earth, he thinks planet Earth is where all the other planets have shipped their criminals. And we are the worst people in the universe. Yeah. And it kind of like, wow, I can get behind that.
Yeah, I can too.
The 4 members of Motley Crue are all in this area. They don't know each other yet. And Mick puts an ad in the paper.
Yeah, it says something along the lines of, I'm an aggressive, crazy guitar player seeking a band.
That's when Nicky responds to it, doesn't he?
Yeah, Nicky Sixx is the bass player. Tommy Lee is the drummer. They are together. They're seeking a band. They see this advert. Mick joins them. They open the door. He's got long hair. He looks like a hippie, but like a rock hippie. Now he's our man, and he's been playing more blues and folk and stuff before. But he likes their style, so that he fits. Then they just need a singer, so they've seen this bloke leading another band on Sunset Boulevard.
Rock Candy, am I remembering?
Yeah,
that
I think
right?
so. And he's got blonde hair and he's amazing charisma.
Like a surfer dude.
He's just into surfing and rock.
And Tommy knows him, right, from school?
Yeah, he does know him from school. And they basically rob him from that band. Yeah. And he's in. Then they all get a house together. It says Sunset Boulevard was a cesspool of depravity.
Yeah, I can imagine it.
And they all get a house together. And the description of that, God. The worst student house you've ever heard of.
Times 10.
Then notch that right up to like shitting on the carpet style. I mean, it's that bad.
Yeah, Mick is living with his wife and that, right?
He's not in it. You're right.
And he's a little bit older. But the others are like 18 still, right?
Yes.
And it's just depraved squat, basically.
Squalor.
It just sounded disgusting.
Absolutely.
I mean, we've all lived in shared houses at some point.
But it's another level.
Yeah. And then they just kind of have a crazy time gigging and fighting and fucking and...
Yeah.
Oh, I tell you what, David Lee Roth comes into this.
Yeah, he was their first fan.
Yeah, and he sounded so clued up. When I think of David Lee Roth, I think, oh my God, he's just a crazy nut job. But they said that he sat them down and he was really helpful about the music business side of things.
And he gave them loads of advice, which they did not take.
Yes. I was surprised at just how measured and sensible David Lee Roth came across in this book.
I wasn't, because I knew that.
Because you've read his book.
I have, actually.
Yeah.
Yeah. Do you think he was all those other things as well, though?
Yeah, I'm sure. So, no, I like to hear that he was very helpful to this young band.
Yeah, at least he tried.
With teenagers, yeah.
And he saw their talent, too. So that's cool. But yeah, they ended up signing with this bloke, Tom Zutaut from Elektra.
Okay.
He was a young 21-year-old bloke who's just out there he wasn't doing much, but he really clued into the scene, being a bit younger. Because them live, I really get that. It's not just the record. It's not the records, actually.
It's not the records.
Their live act was what really was electric and won people over.
They very quickly built up a local buzz.
Yeah.
And they ended up playing like Whiskey A Go-Go.
Yeah.
And then they ended up like playing like 3 or 4 nights in a row, selling out each one.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden they'd created this massive buzz and they were saying to people, we're selling out Whiskey A Go-Go. And they're like, that literally means nothing outside of this area.
Yeah.
But this young A&R guy saw them playing. I think he also noticed that the merch table sold out immediately and stuff. And he's like, okay, there's something here.
Yeah.
These crazy guys. And they were electric on stage.
Yeah.
A lot of energy. The crowd were going mad. So he signed them. But he also said that people in Elektra said he was nuts because it's 1981. It's the second British invasion. It's Haircut 100, Human League. All of this synth stuff is just becoming big. Nobody wants a metal band at the moment. But he stuck with them and he took them on. And the rest is history. I just need to jump back to the point. They have quite a lot of demonic symbolism and they're recording an album which they're calling Shout with the Devil. And
Shout at...
No, they changed
Shout with
it
the
to
Devil.
Shout
They changed it to Shout at the
because
Devil.
when it's called Shout with the Devil, Nicky shacked up with Lita Ford from the Runaways at this point, and they're sharing a flat, and weird things start happening. Weird. To the point where I'm kind of like, oh, this is bullshit. But then the guy from the record company tells his side of the story, and he's like, I was in their flat, and a knife and forks shot up into the ceiling.
Yeah, I've heard these things from people I trust that have seen these things happen, so I actually believe it.
Really?
A lot of people don't, but I do.
So they disturbed some kind of satanic poltergeist.
Yeah, some energy.
And then they said it became so fucked up, and they were scared. I mean, that also, see, the thing is, when it's Lita Ford and Nicky telling the story, I'm really aware they're strung out on drugs.
Yeah,
but they do say there were forks and stuff in the ceiling.
Yeah, but they could have thrown them.
They could have thrown them. But then the guy from the record company comes and sees it.
Yeah, that's when you go.
Yeah, he even says in this book, if I hadn't seen it with my own eyes, I would not have believed it. Yeah. So then they changed the name of the album from Shout with the Devil to Shout at
Yeah, they drop all that
devil.
satanic stuff. It says actually they dropped all the satanic stuff and took up heroin. So you can't win.
Yeah.
And the band were actually nearly dropped from the label in 1983.
The head of Elektra record label got replaced, and the new head didn't want them.
When they played a festival, the US festival, and that's when they saw the potential of how this band, who nobody knew, could completely command a crowd.
Yeah.
They could make people go crazy. I did Google some of their live gigs. They just had an absolute connection with people, getting them going.
That saved them, actually.
Yeah.
And I think the young guy, the manager, really pleaded with him and said, no, come on, this is happening. And then that festival happened, which blew everyone away. Yeah. And I think then the new head said, okay, you can have the money to record an album, but if this does not work, you're out.
Yeah.
And they made it work.
Yeah.
Yeah, that festival, it's interesting. We've read a lot of these autobiographies now, and it doesn't matter how talented or anything you are, there seems to be one moment in time where everything comes together and pushes you to the next. Yeah. That festival was theirs.
Yeah.
I mean, that was kind of do or die, really. If that didn't happen, that head honcho, the new head of Elektra would have dropped them. Yeah. Yeah. Wow, one gig.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, so then they got a tour with Ozzy.
Oh, my God.
That'd be Black Sabbath or Ozzy Osbourne, either way.
Beginning of the 80s, Ozzy was solo.
Solo, was he?
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, talk about another level. They thought they were depraved and they hadn't met Ozzy Osbourne.
I mean, he needs to be put into care, doesn't he?
There's this one story about him where it says they were all in this fancy hotel and he nicked this woman's bag and ran off. And in this woman's bag was a summer dress. So he put this dress on. And then they're hanging around by the pool. And he says, all right, I'm going to do something. And if you challenges him, you do what I do. See if you can do what I do. He gets a straw. There's this whole floor of ants running around. And he snorts a line of ants.
Oh, my God.
Off the floor. And they're all going, oh, my God. And then he pisses on the floor. And then he licks it up. And then he says, okay, you do that then. And they're like, okay, you win.
No way, he challenges them to do it, and actually Nicky Sixx says, okay then, pisses on the floor, and before he can get down to lap up his own piss, Ozzy Osbourne is down there lapping up Nicky Sixx's piss. Why are you laughing? This is not funny.
It's unbelievable. It's just...
All in a summer dress.
In a summer dress by the pool in a fancy hotel. I mean, okay, that's just one story. They probably can't remember the half of it.
Yeah.
Their whole life is like that. I mean, it's literally like that for years.
Yeah. I love that Sharon Osbourne comes in and reads
They all have to behave.
And she says, no drink, no drugs, no sex. I
mean,
and
they actually have to follow it.
Yeah.
And they're all going to explode.
Yeah.
But they have to follow it because she's the mother boss. It's nuts. But they probably learnt new levels of depraved behaviour through Ozzy because he set the bar high.
Yeah. By the way, there was something that happened previously to that, and this is appalling. I know everything that Ozzy Osbourne, I don't care, that's funny, he can do what he wants. But when they were a young band, gigging and stuff, this is before they hit the big time, there used to be not a famous homeless girl, but a known homeless girl who lived on the street who dressed as Cinderella.
Yeah.
And they thought it was funny one night after a gig. Tommy wanted to fuck her, of course, because Tommy fucks anything and everything.
Well, they all do.
Yeah, and they brought her home to fuck her, stole her Cinderella dress, and then she ran off without it, and they said nobody ever saw her again. And I think it was Nikki who said once we had taken clothes from a homeless girl, there were no taboos left. That's...
No, there's some terrible things.
They are terrible.
Whilst we're on this subject, then I'm going to just bring this in. Nikki Sixx says at some point, Tommy and I had raped a drunk girl in a closet and she'd forgotten about it. Vinny had killed someone in a car crash and got away with it. That's where they were at.
Yeah.
But he doesn't say sorry or that was terrible. He just says that as a sentence and then carries on talking.
The bit in the book...
Okay, I can't condone that behaviour at all.
The bit in the book where he talks about that woman in the closet... So he's shagging, presumably consensually shagging a woman in a closet. So they're off their heads. And then he kind of, at some point, he went and got Tommy. Nikki is then shagging the girl with Tommy. No, Tommy's behind. Anyway, they're both there. But basically, Tommy is now shagging this girl and she thinks it's Nikki.
Yeah.
So she hasn't consented to sex with Tommy.
Yeah.
They think it's hilarious. The next day, this woman phones up Nikki and says, I was raped last night. And Nikki says all of a sudden he froze, like, oh no, fuck. But she goes on to say that she was raped by the car that came to pick her up and take her home. And he says, I was so relieved. Basically, he was relieved that she didn't think he had raped her. No consideration for the fact this woman had just been raped.
Yeah.
What he took from that is phew, got away with it.
Yeah, yeah.
Really, I honestly thought when she said he was raped, and he go, oh, I was so relieved. And then I went to make sure she was all right. It was awful she was raped. Doesn't even consider that.
Oh, wow, I got away with it.
Yeah.
But then to actually say that we raped a drunk girl and she doesn't remember, and that's the things they got away with.
Yeah.
And to put that in your autobiography. Those are crimes.
It's a crime.
They're crimes, yeah.
So it's an interesting confession. Yeah. Can he be prosecuted for that now? He's basically admitted to rape.
I don't know, because there's a lot of stuff like this in these sorts of biographies. There's loads of it. And they've written down their own evidence.
Yeah.
And I don't understand, people are getting prosecuted for historical sex crimes.
Yeah.
It's a real thing now.
Yeah.
So their evidence, you can go through all these books and it's all in there. So I don't really get why they would incriminate themselves in writing, but they do.
Do you know what else? I'm saying that they demean and humiliate women, and you're like, that's all part of the game. But they also talk about their violence.
With exceptions.
Yeah, no, okay.
With definite exceptions, raping people that don't remember and stuff like that.
Yeah, no, I
Those
wasn't
are exceptions.
You of,
yes.
Being okay with that. But also they talk about, like, Tommy is going out with this woman called Honey, who they all say is extremely annoying. She sounds annoying, but at one point, Honey calls Tommy's mum the C word, and Tommy says, don't call my mum the C word. Yeah. And she goes, your mum's a C word, C word, C word, C word, C word. And Tommy punches her in the face and her teeth fall out. They kick her out of the car.
Yeah.
Drive off.
She's picking up her teeth.
She's picking up her teeth. And then the driver of the car says, no, we're not leaving her on the side of the pavement. We're going to go and help her pick up her teeth. Yeah. Two things. The fact that Tommy did that, punched a woman in the face so hard that her teeth fell out. The fact that they've written that in this book as well.
Yeah.
It's kind of,
It's just their life, isn't it?
There's no redeeming feature at this point with these men. And Tom, you know what? You make allowances for people like Nikki Sixx, who had that appalling abusive childhood. Tommy's childhood was pretty much all right.
Actually. It was fine. Yeah, it's quite nice. He was very supported.
Yeah. So
there's no explanation other than drugs hit him.
And she was really annoying.
Oh yeah, I mean, she.
But that's how he would. That's how they justified
pushing it. It's verbally pushing it. Sex and violence. Yeah. It's one big thing that their life is. If they're not punching a woman, they're punching each other. They beat each other up all the time. They beat other people up.
Oh, every time they go into a club or something, even walk down the street, people start on them.
They really fight.
I mean, I'm guessing when they say things like, oh, me and Tommy were just walking down the street and we got jumped on. I'm kind of thinking, well, why would people do that? Oh, they look like women. Because they're dressed like women.
Yeah, I mean, people think they're weak, gay,
transgender people.
And they actually are vicious criminals dressed as women. So they don't expect a beating, and that's what they get, though.
So anyway, one of them is saying they're in a hotel room. They got a couple of women there, and there's a blonde woman on the bed naked with her legs spread. And they're like, okay, and they start finding things in the hotel room to shove up her. And one of the things that goes inside her is the phone. But the receiver is kind of hanging out of her.
Oh, because there was two girls they met, and they said, it'd be really funny. They were naked in the car with them, and they said, I'll come up to the hotel, but don't put your clothes on. So he managed to smuggle them naked up to the hotel room. And it was two of them together.
Right.
And they put all sorts of things up them. And one of them was a hotel receiver. And then they got them to phone her mother.
Yeah.
With just the end of the receiver poking out. And tell her that she was not going to be home tonight.
Yeah. And then Nikki, whoever it was, it said at that moment, I lost respect for all the women. Like, at that
moment, it took that.
But also, I lost respect for us.
Yeah.
So there is kind of a journey happening here. Yeah. But it is weird that everything they did to demean and humiliate women, there was actually a breaking point.
Yeah.
And actually, it wasn't one of the worst things they did. It was just seeing another woman call her mother with a phone that was inside her vagina. Yeah. Oh my God, why are we even talking?
That's where the line was.
Yes, the telephone line.
Could have been it. Hey! Yeah, this book has made us have this conversation.
Oh, goodness. It's a bit different from the David Attenborough one, isn't it?
Right, I'd like to talk about this.
Go on.
They'd toured with Iron Maiden. I'm just going to skip through that. Okay, they'd gone to Britain and toured with, opened for Van Halen. Then they made a third album. To celebrate the opening of this third album, they had a 3-day bender. And the band Hanoi Rocks were touring America at that time, and they invited them to join them. And the party was winding down because they'd run out of beer. So Vince Neil and this bloke Razzle,
he's a drummer
from
Hanoi
Hanoi Rocks.
Yeah,
got in Vince's fancy car and went to get beer. And on the way back, had a crash which instantly killed Razzle, and it severely injured two people in an oncoming car who were then brain damaged.
Yes,
the band went out looking for Vince and found him handcuffed and in a total state. What happened from that was he got sentenced to 30 days in prison. He got out after 19 on good behaviour.
The way that happened, because it sounds so entirely lenient. So he's killed Razzle and brain damage.
Vehicular manslaughter he's done for.
He's brain damaged two strangers.
Yeah.
Their families, obviously, there's a massive court case. But what happened, Vince is broke and he has no money, but the band have money.
Yeah.
And because the party was Motley Crue and Hanoi Rocks, they could legally say that was a business meeting.
Yeah.
And so they went out to get supplies for the business meeting, therefore the band can be sued. They said to the families the easiest way to make peace with this, the easiest way to bring this to a conclusion. Yeah. Vince goes to prison for 30 days and you get 2.6 million restitution.
Yeah.
And the families agreed to it.
Yeah.
And that's why it seems incredibly lenient. He also had to do something like 100 hours community service, which turned out being going into schools and stuff and talking about drinking drugs and stuff.
Yeah.
I mean, but I guess the families, what do you do? String it out and then end up with nothing? I guess when you get...
Well, put him in prison would probably help to, make them feel better that he was actually being punished.
I wonder whether his prison sentence was so short because they were getting paid by the band. Maybe they said something like, to raise the money, he needs to be on the road, bringing the money in on tour. Well, yeah,
I'm sure the record company had a lot to do with this as well, because they had a world tour booked, and if they lost Vince Neil, that's gone.
Yeah.
So I'm sure the record company stepped up. One of the headlines said, "Drunk killer Vince Neil sentenced to touring world with rock band."
Yeah.
And that's basically, he got a lot of bad press.
Yeah.
Because he was absolutely, off his head. He shouldn't, that is manslaughter, definitely.
They were doing 65 and a 25 mile an hour.
Yeah, whilst absolutely off the head.
Yeah.
They mention his alcohol level, but it's not the alcohol, it's the drugs.
Yeah.
It definitely affected the rest of his life. He paid a massive price in his soul, which isn't really going to help the family. But Hanoi Rocks band members said that they never got an apology.
Wow.
Yeah.
Razzle was 24.
Yeah. British.
Yeah. Buried on the Isle of Wight.
Born in Leamington Spa, same as my bruv. I had to Google him because I wanted to make him a real person. Yeah, so I wanted to honour him. Did you as well?
Yeah, I did, because in the book his name is Razzle, and it's kind of like, well, that tells me nothing. I don't even know his name.
I wanted to get to know him a little bit.
I did.
Oh, you did too.
Yeah, I did. I wanted to see his picture. I wanted to know about him.
Yeah, he was 24.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's a real loss.
Devastating.
Massive. Yeah, it's really sad. I mean, to be honest, one of them's going to go. Somebody's going to... They're all living this crazy lifestyle.
Well, from this point on, Vince kind of is forced into rehab, which really upsets the dynamic of the band.
Yeah.
Because now he has to be ordered by the court. He has to be... while he's awaiting the trial, he's not allowed to touch any substance because it will affect the outcome of the court case.
Yeah.
So whilst they're on tour, the other three are larging it up.
Oh, they go off their heads.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But they're also really keeping a strict eye on Vince. Like, even if he has a beer, they'll knock it out of his hand. Yeah. But they'll go back to the hotel room and take heroin.
All that time through his trial and going to prison, he says, none of them contacted me. Yeah, right. None of them phoned me to see if I was all right after the trauma. It's very traumatic to have killed someone and brain damaged others. They absolutely didn't contact him. The thing is they're all absolutely, totally off their heads. Of course they can't do anything sensible, like pick up a phone and check on their friend. They're completely involved in their own selves.
Also, I
to the eyeballs.
Kind of felt the way they treated Vince was a bit puritanical, really. Because that could literally have been any one of them.
Yes, it could.
They were all dicing with that outcome on a daily basis. Yeah. Just a lottery. It happened to be Vince at that moment in time, which obviously blew their worlds apart.
Yeah. And they really did seem to judge him.
Yes.
Oh, he's the one who killed someone. Yeah. No, it absolutely could have been. And if they couldn't see that, that's just because they were drugged up to the eyeballs.
Just drugged up to the eyeballs. But they also said, like Nikki says, because everybody was so focused on Vince staying sober, they didn't actually realise that Nikki was seriously going off the rails, and people didn't seem to notice that.
No, they all were, really. But Nikki's the one who actually died. Yeah, they all got a phone call saying Nikki's died. He had died. They went to somebody's house to get heroin, and the bloke said, I'll shoot it up for you, which was a mistake because it was obviously too much. And he fully died, and they took him to hospital, got him going. He was dead for 2 minutes. At that point, he pulled all the tubes out of himself, went home and shot up more heroin when he got home, but he changed his answer machine to... I'm not in. So they all knew he'd been home, so they knew he wasn't dead. And he was gone for another 2 days just on his own, taking more heroin. And at that point, the management, thank God, cancelled the tour because they would have died.
Yeah.
And sent them all to rehab together, actually forced them all to go to rehab, which they bloody needed.
Do you know what the difference between this and other autobiographies we've read is that Motley Crue managed, and their tour promoters, that whole gang are proper old school music industry people who are not related to the act.
Yeah, that's very true. Like, they're still financially gaining from their success.
Yeah.
But they're much more business-like about it. Yeah. Also, they didn't care about them. They weren't emotionally involved with them.
Yeah.
Because they actually were constantly, completely exasperated by their behaviour.
Yeah.
Because they had to, everywhere they went, they had to clean up. Undo the damage, lawsuits, the hotels getting mended because they fully trashed everything, set things on fire.
There's a really great part in here. Oh, it's page 229, so it's way ahead. Yes, here we go. Hang on. So Doc, their manager, who's just been fired, he has like a page in this book, and he says, I've managed Mink DeVille. He's managed James Brown. Could you imagine what catalogue of disasters that must have been?
That seemed like a walk in the park compared to...
He says, I've been dragged through the deepest shit by all kinds of mentally ill people, but I have never been through what Motley Crue put me through. He's managed all these other big bands. He's like, Motley Crue was just like 10 years of hell. I hated them.
Yeah, hated them. So which helps them be a bit more distanced when there's no emotional investment at all. Yeah. It's a pain in the arse to work for these people. What about when they toured Japan?
That was
these Japanese promoters. One of the things, since reading it, it's not left me, is that when they played Hiroshima, they started by jamming "You've Dropped the Bomb on Me," which is, that's beyond. Yeah. I just can't get past it. I can't get past that. That's absolutely beyond wrong.
Yeah.
I mean, some people go, "Oh, it's hilarious," but to me, it's just not funny at all.
No, they don't have a limit, do they? There is no stop valve for these.
It's how far can we push everything, and they go beyond it. Yeah. And that Japanese promoter, they're on a train, and they've got this train.
They were
with
arguing with their Japanese promoter, and Nicky Sixx threw a bottle of Jack Daniels, and it hit a commuter.
Yeah, and
gashed his head open.
Yeah, and fully blood everywhere. And they're yelling at it. It's horrendous.
Yeah. There's this part where they go to Moscow to do this big fundraising concert with Ozzy and Bon Jovi and the Scorpions. And on the plane over, their manager, who is at this moment, I think it's Doug. No, it's Doc.
Yeah.
Doc.
Yeah.
Their manager says to them, "It's really stripped back. It's a fundraiser. Scorpions, Ozzy, Bon Jovi and yourselves are on. Everybody's playing 50 minutes each. No stage, fireworks or anything. It's just all about the music. You're on third." Anyway, when they get there, they're told they're going on first. And they're like, okay, let's get on with it. But then they realise Bon Jovi comes on. They're in the middle of their world tour. They do their full set for an hour and a half, and they have pyrotechnics and everything. So Motley Crue are very, very pissed off. Yeah. They feel like they've just been taken to Russia.
Yeah.
Just total waste of their time. They've been lied to. So Tommy pushes over the manager and says, "You're fired." And they all go back, and then they're kind of thinking, "Oh, fuck, we've just fired the manager at a really crucial part in our career because we're going up and up and up." Anyway, they're in the midst of this crisis thinking, "Oh no, we fired the manager." And then when they get back to America, they find out that their album's gone to number one. Their first number one album. Yeah. I mean, how exciting that must have been. After all those years to finally get number one album on the mainstream charts. Yeah. I never realised they were that big, you see.
Yeah, right.
They were massive.
Huge.
Yeah. Mm. So, when all this crazy... almost decade of just complete debauchery and massive success. At the end of that, they have their biggest album ever. Dr. Feelgood sells like 10 million in the USA alone, a number one album.
They tour to support it.
Then the record company say, "Okay, look, things are going good. You need to record a new album. We really believe in you. You're doing so well." But they assign them like drug therapists and stuff to get them through it. And Nicky Sixx actually says, in 8 years together, millions of albums sold. Nobody recorded us properly. Nobody ever pushed us to our creative limits. They kind of almost just winged it for the whole...
And there's sometimes where they say the music we're making was shit.
Yes.
Which is kind of really bad. If you loved Motley Crue, you'd be like, "Oh, they think they made shit music."
Yeah.
That's odd.
I think that's the pressure of the recording contract. You have to have such a high output. And then a lot of it, when it comes down to production, they try and refine you just a little too much to make you slightly more appealing to MTV and the radio. Like you say, like the live concerts are where it's at.
I think it was about the live.
Yeah.
I really do. If you're a fan, I think you'd have to be there.
Mm-hmm. So they're recording the new album, but the rift between Vince and the others has never really come back together, and he's not turning up for the recording sessions. He'd rather race his racing car and stuff. So the others basically kick him out.
So then they have to replace him with John Corabi, and they're not successful without Vince Neil.
No, it works to a certain extent because they are Motley Crue.
But they end up playing really small clubs.
Yeah, they're not selling tickets.
They're not selling tickets. They get smaller and smaller.
And the album, they recorded an album with John Corabi, and it went into number 7, and they thought, okay, this is all right. Next week it went to number 20.
Yeah, that's right. It was
dropped right out, and then they weren't buying the live shows.
No.
There's a really good quote, actually, because I was thinking when they said that Vince was out and they got John Corabi in, I was trying to think of any successful band who replaced their lead singer and was equally successful after the fact. It doesn't happen, does it?
The magic's gone.
Yeah. And actually, there's a really good quote in here by Nicky, who says, because Vince has gone, John Corabi's in, and they've lost the sparkle.
Yeah.
That's the right word. We forgot what made us Motley Crue. The chance collision of 4 very driven, very flawed, and very different personalities.
Yeah.
It is.
That's most bands, isn't it?
Yeah, no, absolutely.
Yeah.
And that's why it doesn't work when you replace a member.
Especially the front man who's really charismatic and gets the audience going out. They love him as well. You've invested in that person.
Yeah, it shifts the paradigm. And it really, so most rock bands, you can be talented, you can be good looking and stuff, but ultimately it relies on the chemistry. Even if that chemistry isn't good, like something like Fleetwood Mac. That Rumours, one of the best albums of all time, actually is born out of the fact that they were really falling out at that point. So it doesn't necessarily mean you have to have members of a band who will really get on. It's also as much about negative chemistry as well as positive chemistry. But if it wasn't those actual people at that moment in time, then it doesn't work.
Yeah.
And that's what's happened here. It was what's happened with everyone. We can't think of a single band who...
It's true. And that's also the nightmare of a band, is that you need every one of them.
Yeah.
And then all the crazy stuff happens because of the pressures and the drugs. Right at this point, Vince pops up. It goes into this whole story about how his little girl got a terrible cancer at 4 years old. There's a huge amount in this book about the whole time that they spent. It's his ex-wife at this point. He's with a new wife called Heidi, who's really supportive, and they spend 4 months from her diagnosis, I think. She's in and out of hospital, and it's the tragedy of it saying, I don't want to die, can I go home please? All the heartbreaking stuff. Tragic. Heartbreaking. And she eventually dies, aged 4, little girl.
Yeah.
It was a tumour. And that shouldn't happen to a 4-year-old girl.
Do you know why that all happened?
Why?
What they found, so they moved to this nice new house where all these new houses were built because of the views.
Oh, that, yeah.
They were so picture-perfect place to live. Yeah. A nuclear power plant nearby was being decommissioned, and they dumped everything nearby.
Yeah, and it came out
so that
years
area,
later.
That area, there was a disproportionate amount of people who had cancer, and there's class action with something like 100,000 people that were involved.
And he became really involved with that cause after that, once they found that out. And that's, of course, an enormous thing to go through for Vince Neil, but also that time none of the band phoned, none of them asked about it. They just couldn't comprehend it. They're partying off their heads, they can't comprehend. I don't think Tommy's had kids yet even. They just don't understand what he's been through.
Do you know what? All the appalling stuff, I have to say, this book, I have come away from this liking some of them, actually. I think their behaviour was terrible. I don't think they were essentially terrible people, although they were at times. And Mick, I kind of thought he's not so bad as the others.
No, because he was in so much pain all the time. To be honest, the way he's describing his pain, he could barely move. He's had a hip replacement. His spine was frozen. I'm amazed he's gone on this long. I really am.
He says that when you watch him on stage, he looks like a statue whose hands can move. And he said that people thought that was his stage persona, that it was this very cool, aloof thing. Yeah. And he used to be really jealous of Vince and Nicky because they'd run around the stage, jump up and down, and he physically couldn't do it.
Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah. And that time that car crash happened, that party, he took himself to the beach and just walked into the sea.
Oh my God, yeah.
Off his head, but he walked to the sea to end it all.
Yeah.
And he found himself the next day washed up on the beach. Woke up washed up on the beach.
Yeah.
Amazed to be alive. But then thought he was dead. He actually thought he was dead because he walked back into the party and everyone was so weird. He thought they were all sad because he died. He thought he was a ghost. And they were all sad because he died, not knowing that Razzle had died. That's how fucked they all were. But he's the one who's trying to kill himself more because he's in agony. Motley Crue are touring this year, 2023.
No.
They are touring this year.
Are they
with
really?
Def Leppard. Yeah.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
There's a lot of very happy metalheads out there.
That's all of them together again as well.
Nice.
So anyway, they've gone to 2023 from 1981.
What's it? Yeah, what's the tour called? It's a miracle we're all still alive.
Yeah. I think it said Red, White and Crew. Yeah.
Well, good for them.
But it should be called A Miracle We're All Still Alive, because it really is.
It is. I'm amazed that not even one of them... I mean, okay, Nicky died a bit.
Yeah, a little bit.
Right, this book is an entertaining read, right? Yeah. I kind of loved it in spite of myself.
I mean, it's everything you would expect from a whole rock group, metal group's biography. You wouldn't expect anything less, would you?
No.
And it's very insightful if you want to know what crazy rock metal band are like.
Yeah.
What their lives are like.
It's interesting in that, like I said, that opening paragraph, I kind of thought, oh no.
There's so much more. It goes deep, actually.
Yeah, and finding out about Nikki Sixx's childhood and stuff, which happens quite early in the book, it did make me think, okay, there's more to this. It's not two-dimensional. No. They are at times fucking terrible people.
Yeah.
And they would admit that themselves. In fact, they do.
Oh, they do admit that, yeah.
Yeah. And they were young. And again, they were given the keys to the city. They could do whatever they wanted.
But they're not young now, and I don't think they've changed that much.
Okay. I'm sure they wouldn't let us know they've changed so much because it's good for the brand, right? Yeah. That's Motley Crue.
That is Motley Crue.
The crew is definitely Motley.
They are so Motley.
Thank you so much for listening to this episode of Thrift Shop Biography. We love making this podcast and we're absolutely thrilled that so many of you are already listening. We're new to this and you could really help us out by leaving us a review somewhere, wherever you listen to this podcast. And if you could share us, tell your friends about us or drop some links on social media. We have a Facebook page called Thrift Shop Biography, so make sure you come over there to hear about the episodes first and what else we're up to. Okay, see you next week. And if you're new here, there are loads more episodes now to go and listen in the back catalogue, so make sure you go and enjoy them. Okay, thank you very much.